Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us on our webinar presentation on how to hire a professional property manager. My name is Scott Pastel. I'm the VP of Property Management at Marshall Reddick Real Estate. Also one of the partners. For those of you that haven't met me yet, I started working here in 2005, February actually, so coming up on my 16th year at Marshall Reddick. I'll be going over a little bit about my background in a moment. If you guys wouldn't mind, any of you that are savvy on your GoToWebinar app there, if you don't mind typing in your chat box or questions, if the audio is coming in clearly, just want to make sure you guys can hear us okay before I speak for quite a bit the next hour. So if you can hear us, it looks like thank you. All right, thank you guys. Thank you folks, appreciate it. Awesome, okay, loud and clear, good. All right, well, we're here tonight to talk about property management. We have a lot to talk about. What the topic and really what the focus of this presentation is how to hire a professional property manager. You see on your screen, I've underlined that word. Well, you know, property management is a very loose term. You know, I've met landlords that act as a property manager. I've met realtors, I've met real estate agents that act or try to act as a property manager. And then I've met, you know, of course, full-fledged businesses, property management companies, otherwise known as professional property management. So throughout this presentation, I'm kind of going to be talking about the difference between professional property management and I don't want to call it unprofessional property management, but the opposite of professional property management. There is quite a big difference that I'm going to be explaining to you guys tonight. So this is going to be a pretty detailed presentation. We are recording it. We may not have enough time for questions on the webinar, but please do type questions if you have them, because I'll make sure either to have myself or one of our representatives at Marshall Reddick follow up with you directly to talk about more about your unique situation. We have quite a bit of people signed up, and I gather that a good amount of you may own rental properties already, some of which might be West Coast, some might be East Coast, some might be in all different places of the country. I imagine some of you may have professional property management in place. Some of you might be managing your own properties, and then some of you are probably just here to learn. You know, maybe you haven't had the opportunity to own rental properties yet. So no matter what bucket you fit into, I believe you're going to get a lot of good information and value out of the presentation. It is going to be about an hour. I might go about 5 minutes over if I keep going on tangents, which I'll try not to do. But you know, we can only talk so much about property management in an hour. So understand that this is going to be an overview, high-level approach to different aspects of property management. Those of you that are rather new, or maybe this is your first time on a Marshall Reddick webinar, first of all, welcome. We do many webinars, about 6, 7, 8 a month, and all different topics. This one is definitely one of my favorites because I feel like property management is kind of the make or break factor in owning rental properties. I call it the X factor. It's really what determines the long-term success and the financial return. It's what controls the income and expenses of your rental property. So certainly property management can be, it can be considered one of the most important parts of owning rental property. I'm getting a couple messages that you guys are not able to see my screen. Good to go. Okay, sorry about that. I'm glad that we caught that one early. I don't know why I have dual monitors, thought it was working out okay. Anyway, this is only slide 2. So this is basically the 3 different departments of Marshall Reddick Real Estate. Marshall Reddick is a real estate broker. We're a multi-state broker. We operate and have brick and mortar offices in California, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. 4 different markets across the US that are all a little bit different than each other versus price points, cash flow, appreciation, and just kind of like financial returns of property. But we are a one-stop shop, meaning we locate properties in these different markets that offer, you know, attractive benefits to investors. We act as their fiduciary, as their realtor, and either helping them acquire property or helping them liquidate and sell property. We also offer property management. A very large amount of our transactions are investment properties, or otherwise known as non-owner occupied properties. And in the markets that we operate in and where we have boots on the ground, we do property management. We do property management for anything from a single unit property all the way up to, that should say, large multifamily. We currently manage many properties that are in about the 15 to 25 unit category in different areas we're in. So we offer property management, not only to those buying and selling properties with us, but definitely to those that own rental properties in our markets. Lastly, we are also a private money lender. We're a licensed NMLS lender. We only lend to investment property borrowers, and we do short-term and long-term financing, either for fix and flip loans or for long-term rental properties, folks that don't want to go through the banks or just can't qualify for conventional financing. So this is just a little bit about myself, because I'll be speaking to you guys for about the next hour. Just want you to have a little bit of background on who I am and where all this information is coming from. So I started working for Marshall Reddick Real Estate in 2005, and I've worked here ever since. I had the opportunity to come on as an intern, very bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, very green, and knew absolutely nothing about real estate. Learned a Harvard degree in real estate by the time the market crashed, or I guess you could say by maybe 2009 and 10. Felt like I had my Harvard degree in real estate investing. I've had the opportunity to purchase several different properties and really in different places of the country. Still own a handful of different investment properties myself. I'm talking to you guys from Newport Beach, California, which is where our corporate headquarters is located. And then again, we also have offices in several other states across the country, from Texas, Tennessee to Florida. I want to share with you guys what the property management philosophies are. So I'm starting at a high level, and then of course we're going to dig in a little bit deeper. But the real true relationship of property management only works when the property management company makes money only when the landlord makes money, and doesn't make money when the landlord loses money. You will find that there are a lot of toxic property management relationships out there. And for the consumer, it might even be difficult to figure out if the property management company is benefiting when the owner is essentially suffering, I guess you could say. What does that actually mean? There are management companies that charge management fees during vacancy, when there's no rental income coming in. You know, there are some companies that charge fees during vacancy. We typically try to avoid those. And again, when it comes to things like repairs and maintenance, I'll share with you, like, it's the dirty world of property management. There are property managers who have in-house maintenance and in-house contracting, and that might appeal to a landlord who says, "Oh, you guys do the maintenance yourselves. You have your own maintenance staff, W-2 handyman. There may be even a general contractor that owns the company, and they've got a bunch of different GCs that work for the company." That might be appealing. The problem is that if they have maintenance in-house, they're profiting from maintenance. It will always be looked at as a profit center. You want to work with companies that don't benefit from maintenance and vacancy. Typically, those are real estate brokerages that also do property management. They could be also, like, you know, I guess turnkey operators that do sales and management. Essentially, you want to make sure that you understand exactly where those fees are going to, and if the company that's managing your property is making more money from maintenance and repairs than they are from the management fees that they're charging you. My advice: avoid companies that do in-house maintenance. Secondly, trust. Trust is a huge factor of property management. I look at property management as your babysitter, right? I own properties that are as far away as let's see, my farthest one is probably about 2,000 miles away in the Gulf Coast, and I have a property manager. I've seen that property once in the 12 years that I've owned it, and not sure if I'll ever see it again. I have an amazing property manager out there in Alabama, and what's great about that is, you know, I've built a great relationship over the years. But essentially, I had to do some interviewing. I had to really make sure that our visions aligned, and that you know, that I felt there was a good relationship there. So our job as property managers in the markets we're located in is really to build the best relationships possible. We look at this as a long-term relationship. We also look at property management not as a profit center. We look at property management as an excuse or a way for us to maintain a long-term relationship with our clients and to have more control over their bottom line. And with that, number 3, we are investment-minded managers. A large amount of our staff members own rental properties. We are servicing rental properties that are owned by our employees. We have all different employees in our lending department. We have employees in our accounting department and web development that we have employees that work in our sales department that own rental properties that we manage. We really truly look at this as not just property management, but asset management. We look at more than just collecting rent and enforcing the lease. We look at ways to help our clients achieve the highest return with the least amount of risk and time. And we'll go through a lot of examples on that subject. Types of properties that Marshall Reddick Real Estate manages, as I mentioned, everything from single family up to kind of small mid-size apartment buildings. What this says at the bottom is we take over properties whether they're occupied or not. If they are occupied, if there is a renter in place, there's going to be a due diligence process where we're going to want to review the lease agreements. We may also want to review if there's copies of applications, if we're able to get access to that. We'll want to figure out who's been managing the property. We want to look at the rent roll. We know that we're in an environment right now where there are renters that are not current on their monthly rents. That is a little bit of a unique situation. If that's a scenario that you're in, that's something that we should talk more about one-on-one, as that's a little bit outside of the norm. But we do take over properties whether they are occupied or vacant. Marshall Reddick Real Estate has basically a turnkey system for property management. We are up to date on current technology with property management. So we have a software called Appfolio, very well-known software in the property management industry. Appfolio allows the renters, the tenants to have a login so that they can log in and view their balance, pay rent, set up auto pay, submit maintenance requests, all on their phone or laptop. Renters love doing that. There's tremendous amount of value for the convenience of having a renter be able to go on our website and submit their notice to vacate, or set up auto pay, or submit a maintenance request and upload pictures and notes. Renters don't really, favor going directly over phone and email or paying through Zelle or Venmo or all these methods that self-managed landlords do. I've found constantly that tenants really do value having professional property management in place, knowing that we also have 24-hour emergency maintenance hotline, that if there is an issue, fire or flood related at 2 in the morning, we actually do have a service that we've contracted with that will answer at any time of the day or night. And they'll log the information and basically instruct the tenants to either call 911 or shut off the main water line. And then, of course, we're contacted if it's something that we need to come out to. Our landlords also have a login on our website. For them, it's a lot more report driven. Our landlords are able to get monthly statements to review their income and expenses. They can run monthly or annual reports. All of the lease documentation is uploaded to the landlord's portal. So whenever we lease a property or sign a lease renewal, those documents are uploaded to the landlord's portal. We do electronic ACH rent disbursement. So all of our landlords receive their rent payment via ACH to the bank account that they set up in the system. Anytime that we do any repairs and maintenance, if it's a large enough item, we'll provide estimates and bids. That dollar amount is set at $400. So if it's a repair needed above $400, we'll typically get multiple bids from different plumbers, handyman, contractors, roofers, what have you. And then when the work is completed, we provide the invoice to our landlords, and that goes directly on the portal. So you can just, instead of having to save these receipts and invoices and all these filing cabinets, and during tax season spending 200 hours on your tax return, all of the tax deductible expenses for maintenance and repairs are uploaded to the landlord portal. Going over to the right, sorry, I'm switching around a little bit. In the middle, I'll go through the screening and background check process in a lot more detail a little bit later in the presentation. For properties, we do annual inspections at every time we do a renewal. So every 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, whenever we're negotiating a renewal, our maintenance supervisor will schedule a trip to go to the property, do a walkthrough with the renters, just make sure that there's nothing that stands out and that the property is still up to code and that they haven't committed any lease violations. Assuming everything looks good, we will sign the lease renewal with the renters, and before doing that, we'll determine whether there's room for an increase. I'd like to share with you guys the markets that Marshall Reddick provides in-house sales and management, and then a handful of markets that we have a third-party company or third-party property manager and realtor that we work with. So the ones that are circled in blue, so Marshall Reddick holds broker's licenses in California, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and that all 5? Sorry, I think that was it. The ones that are circled, California, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky. Kentucky is actually part of our Clarksville, Tennessee market. That's why it's not listed on here. Clarksville is on the northern border of Tennessee, and just 10, 15 minutes north is Oak Grove, Kentucky, on the south side border of Kentucky. These are very different markets. As I'm sure you're kind of looking through the list, a lot of them are major metropolitan markets. We have our own recipe for the markets that we're located in and the markets that we offer to our investors. A lot of that is driven by landlord-friendly laws. A lot of that's driven by population growth, job growth, rental demand, affordability, a lot of factors that we found are kind of ripe for investment markets. We all know that California is not exactly on the top of the list for cash flow. However, we've noticed a lot of our clients do own rental properties in California, many that have probably owned them for 10, 20, 30 years. And a large amount of the properties that we manage in California were actually previous primary residences of our landlords. The ones that aren't, many of which some purchased in the last 10 years, some purchased, 15, 20 years ago. And then we do have some people that are actually actively buying investment properties in Southern California right now. Is that, the barrier of entry is a little higher, but there are folks that are still purchasing. The majority of the sales that we do in the other markets are investment related. So in those cases, we're helping the client target, locate a property, submit offers on it, do the home inspection, help them through the escrow process, helping them set up insurance, having that final walkthrough, and then as soon as it closes, we send out our maintenance manager to do a full walkthrough, put together a punch list. And I'm going to show you guys on the next few slides kind of what that whole process looks like. But essentially, these are the markets we cover. The ones in blue, Marshall Reddick's doing in-house. The other ones, we have a third-party team. These are all of our brick and mortar offices. So I'm talking to you guys from the top left office in Newport Beach, California. That is a mix of our Orange County. It looks like we have a couple employees in Los Angeles there as well, too. We've definitely grown in size a lot since then. I should probably update that photo. I just like this one just because I don't know, it looks cool, right? So anyway, that's our office on MacArthur Boulevard, right next to John Wayne Airport, Newport Beach. Going clockwise, so that's our Southwest Florida office. That's in Cape Coral, Florida. That's on Del Prado Boulevard. That's a very well-known street in Cape Coral. And we house about 20 employees there. As I'm going through this, I can kind of just delineate. We manage about 250 properties in Los Angeles, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino. So most of SoCal we cover. About 250 properties in California. We manage about 500 properties in Southwest Florida, and these are a lot of single family and multifamily properties. At the bottom there, that's a very recent photo of our San Antonio and actually Austin, Texas team. That's a lot of our property management staff that you're looking at there. If you guys have some of you might have actually been to our office. We have a lot of clients that fly out, or were flying out, or are starting to fly out again, or are driving out, or renting an RV and getting out there one way or another. So anyway, yeah, that's our San Antonio, Texas office. Great team of property managers, leasing agents, realtors, maintenance supervisors that cover San Antonio and Austin for us. And then on the bottom left there, that's our Clarksville, Tennessee office. Missing is our newest employee, Brittany. And we manage also about 580, somewhere close to 600 properties in Texas. And then in Tennessee, we're right at about 200 properties. So if you did the math correctly, we're right at about 1,500, somewhere around 1,500 properties combined at Marshall Reddick. And it allows our clients to have diversity in the markets that they invest in. We have a lot of clients that own property in 2 or 3 of these markets. I haven't checked to see, but it's possible that we might have some that own property in all of these markets that we manage. So how to hire a professional property manager. This is kind of the premise of what we're going to be going over. I'm going to be, this is a short outline, I guess, that sets the stage for some more slides coming up. I'm going to be talking about, first, what does a professional property manager do? Secondly, how does a property manager earn their fees? And that's something for you to be aware of. And of course, why does it make sense to work with a professional property manager? And I'm going to add to that, why should you work with a property manager even if your property is 5 minutes from your house? Because property management has nothing to do with how close you are to your property. There is so much more to property management, right? I'm going to be talking about the liability of being a landlord. I'm going to be talking about contracting and repairs and understanding all the different components of property management. I'm going to be talking about how to run a rental analysis and determine the true fair market rent, not looking at Zillow, not looking at Trulia, but actually doing a full comparative market analysis to determine what the true fair market value of that property is. And really just understanding lease agreements, right? I mean, even if you live in the state that your property is located in, I mean, do you really understand all the fair housing laws? Do you really understand all the building codes? Would you want to understand them? Is that, you know, is that why we're investing in real estate? You know, I mean, I invest in real estate for retirement, for income, for diversity, for financial benefits. I don't do it so that I can go, you know, try to skin my knees and bruise my elbows and get into some trouble. I do it to make money, increase my profit and decrease my risk and decrease my expenses. I just know that having the right property manager is the magic recipe, that you know, magic ingredient that allows you to do that. So how much money can you save hiring a professional property manager, having a good property manager? Well, now I'm going to show some examples, and this is just something I do every single day, if not, you know, every week, if not every day, is talking to a landlord that's either trying to rent the property themselves or just using a random agent, just a realtor, and their property's sitting vacant for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And, you know, I'm trying to explain to them that if you had your property in the hands of the right people that should be renting your property in 30 days or less, you would have saved tens of thousands of dollars in lost income. What I want you guys to think about is not just the expenses in real estate, but the loss of income, right? The loss of income in vacancy, or the loss of income in the form of expenses through major repairs, right? Or having to do things that protect your liability that you shouldn't even have gotten into that issue in the first place. This isn't about saving every little penny. This is about making as much money as possible and having the lowest amount of expenses. Vacancy is an expense, right? And if you're considering property management and looking at the fees and saying, well, property manager has a leasing fee and they have a management fee, what you really need to understand is what other options you have available and how those options are logically or reasonably better. So let's go through this in a little bit more detail. A property manager's job is to decrease your vacancy. A good property manager only makes money when there's income, not when there's vacancy, right? A property management company like us takes professional photos, not iPhone photos. We take pictures with all the lights on, high resolution photos, 20 or 30 photos, and not just in the photos, but we have our marketing team put together a detailed description. We have our property management team run a detailed rental market analysis to determine exactly what the fair market rent is. We also do this while a property is vacant. You know, we're not trying to lease a property while there's someone in there. That doesn't work right now. It didn't really work before COVID. Definitely doesn't work now. If you're doing that, just wait for your renters to move out, you know, and hopefully we have the opportunity to help you avoid any of these giant mistakes. Having property management reduces your liability tenfold. The way that we do property management is that the tenants don't know who the landlords are. They don't meet the landlord. They don't know them by name. You want that. You do not want your renter to know who you are. And I'm sure some of you guys are either rolling your eyes or going, uh-oh, you know, that's me. So hopefully after watching this presentation that we can talk and help you get out of that so that you do not have a relationship with your renter. You do not want to have a relationship with your renter. One of the benefits of property management is we're the bad guy, right? We're the ones that go to the tenants and say, it's time for your lease to be renewed, right? Are you interested in renewing the lease? If you are, wonderful. Here's the rent increase amount, right? We're the ones that have to go to them and say, hey, you guys are not, we have to enforce the lease agreement, right? And if we find out that they brought in a pet that they weren't supposed to have, or if they're not parking according to the HOA rules and regulations or according to the lease agreement, or if they're late on rent, right? I could go on and on and on about scenarios. These things happen. They're gonna happen. If they haven't happened to you yet, you just haven't owned your property long enough, or you don't own enough properties yet, right? Give it some more time and build up a portfolio. These things happen constantly. How do I know that? I'm sitting next to our property management team every day that is constantly working through challenges, overcoming obstacles, and earning every penny, if not more, of our management fee. Our goal is that you guys don't have to worry about this stuff, right? You shouldn't have to be brought into all of these messes or challenges, right? We'll communicate with the owner and we'll let them know when there's an issue, but we're the ones that do all the communication with the renter. How do we reduce liability? Not only do we have eviction attorneys, real estate attorneys, collections companies, but we have a very educated and informed staff that knows the building codes and rental property laws and the rental property codes in each state, which are different state by state. Going through this a little bit more. So less expense for repairs and maintenance, right? I mean, maybe you're a contractor, maybe you were a contractor, and maybe you know everything about every component of a property. Most of you probably aren't in that situation. Being able to talk to a plumber, being able to talk to a contractor, being able to talk to an HVAC technician, and going over all these components and understanding what is good pricing, that's our job. Our job is to bid out projects, get multiple bids, and review them with you and guide you to the one that makes the most sense. We have no conflict of interest because we don't make money from maintenance and repairs. I'll go over our fees in a moment, but they're only related to the rental income of a property. All the maintenance and repairs, we work with third-party independent contractors. They're part of our approved vendor team. Dozens and dozens and dozens of vendors in each market we're in. Handful of plumbers, handful of handyman, handful of electricians. We have multiple vendors in each category in every market we're in. This is just a relationship. We're not on any contract with these people. If they do a good job, we're going to keep sending them business. If they price things right, we're going to keep sending them business. And as we grow our portfolio bigger and bigger and bigger, we're adding more and more and more better quality vendors. But a portfolio like us that we can bring to a vendor and has 200, 500 properties, safe to say we're probably going to get the attention of that contractor more than a self-managed landlord that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. Less tenant turnover. Well, less tenant turnover in a lot of ways. When tenants call us, if we don't answer the phone, we're calling them right back within an hour. We're emailing them within 24 hours or less. We prioritize their issues based on high, medium, or low urgency. We have a ton of communication with our renters. When you're at work, so are we, but the renter is able to get a hold of us when they need to, right? So it's very important that good communication's there. When we respond to maintenance issues quickly, when we respond to tenants quickly, and we show them that good customer service, it's likely they're going to want to stay in that property longer if everything else in their life is working out. Better quality renters stay longer and take better care of your home. So every time we do a renewal, we'll ask the owner, if they're good with the rent increase. It's at the end of the day, it's up to the owner. We'll recommend either keeping it the same or increasing it based on a lot of different factors. But we know if we choose the right renter, if we choose that perfect renter, that ideal renter, and even if it takes a little bit longer for us to find, we know that that's going to make all the difference in the world. It's our job not to just lease the property, it's to lease the property to the right folks, the folks that not only pass all of our applications and background checks on paper, but the folks that have good intentions and the folks that ideally are hopefully looking to live in that property for many years. Not having, to deal with constant maintenance, not having to deal with vacancy allows you to have less stress, less headache, and really just less time away from all the other things that you really enjoy doing. So going into more of kind of the technical components of what a professional property manager does, when you are actually purchasing a property with Marshall Reddick, likely there's a owner seller living in that property. In many cases, it could be rental occupied, but if it's going vacant at closing, we're going to walk it several times throughout escrow, but also at the end of escrow to get a formal make-ready punch list. We're going to send you a list of what items need to be done. We do that every time that there's a move out. Even after our renters that we place move out year, 2, 3, 4 years later, we do what's called a move out inspection. We estimate the fix-up costs necessary to re-rent that property. We have a very intimate knowledge of building codes and also safety hazards. We also have very intimate knowledge of cosmetics. We always advise very neutral colors for paint. We'll give you options for hard surface flooring versus carpet, right? And you'll be able to evaluate whether it makes sense to put in new carpet or put in vinyl plank flooring or one of those options. And we'll kind of give you that feedback on what makes the most sense for you. When we walk a property that has carpet, of course, we're going to look at the condition of it. If it's relatively new, we can shampoo it, great. If we feel like we've got to replace that carpet, we're going to tell you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your job to I guess you could say, to build that relationship and to trust and listen to our feedback and advice. It's very important that we build that relationship so that we can have these conversations. We'll also do a rental market analysis that I'm going to show a copy of in a little bit. The rental market analysis includes currently active and recently leased properties. We have software on the MLS that allows us to look at not just what's currently available like you guys can on all the public sites. We can look at everything that's rented 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. We can look at all of the recent rental activity to see what a like-kind property in that neighborhood rented for. That's the data that we're going to give you. Once we've completed the initial make ready, where that's cleaning and touch up or anything larger than that, we're going to take professional photos and advertise the property on all the major platforms. We assign a dedicated leasing agent in our office, wherever the property is located, to answer the phone or respond to any online inquiries. I'm going to speak for another minute on showing the property. So before we even receive an application, when our leasing agent is scheduling the showing, they ask a series of detailed phone screening questions like, when are you looking to move? How many people would be living in the property? Do you have any pets? Why are you moving? Where do you live now? And just kind of getting an idea, do you know your income range? Do you know your credit range? There is no point for us to take all that time to show a property to somebody with their dirty shoes and what have you when they don't qualify. So we're going to do that, I guess you could say, pre-qual with that renter prospect over the phone. If everything sounds like it lines up, our leasing agent will meet them at the property and do a guided showing. We certainly follow CDC regulations. If renters are a little bit sensitive to that, we can wait outside, wait for them to do a showing, come back in, definitely maintain social distancing. We've actually been extremely successful with leases throughout the entire pandemic. And it really, if anything, it's created even more demand, as I believe people are not, they're being a little bit more decisive. They're not looking at 20 properties before making a decision. I feel like in this environment, people are being a little bit more decisive. We also can use our video walkthrough tools. We can have our leasing agent film a video walkthrough. We have done that in some cases where tenants are moving out of state. We'll be able to send them video walkthroughs so that they can hopefully make a decision. After showing the property, we'll receive hopefully the application, and we screen the applicants thoroughly. We do 5 different types of screening and background checks. We have a income verification, and we require the renters to provide either their last 60 days pay stubs or the last year's tax return if they're self-employed. Essentially, our requirement is that the household combined income has to be at least 2.5 to 3 times the monthly rent and their gross combined income. So we have right off the bat a hard number that we're going to be looking at to make sure that their gross income meets that number. We're also going to do a credit check. So on the credit check, our requirement is that the applicants all have at least a 600 minimum FICO. Of course, we'd love to see higher, and if we get multiple applications, we can pick from the cream of the crop. If we price the property correctly, chances are we may get multiple applications. And we're able to look at their entire credit report. So basically, we're looking at if they've had anything reported on credit, like any bankruptcies, evictions, if they have any large collections balances, if they've ever skipped out on a balance of a property, if a landlord or property manager reports that on credit, it's going to show up. So those are things that we're screening on the credit report. And we also do criminal background check, and we would be able to disqualify anybody that has any violent felonies. We also do a verification of employment. So we call their employer to verify they actually work at their place of business. And then lastly, we do a rental history verification. So we'll call their current and previous landlords. We gather all the landlords' names, phone numbers, property addresses, duration of time they lived there. We get their current employer, we get their salary, we get their employer or HR manager's name and phone number. We get a lot of detail on these applicants, and it's fantastic, and it really allows us to make good long-term decisions. And we'll look at how long have they lived at their last place of residency, how long have they lived at the place before, how long have they been at their employer, right? We look at a lot more than just what's on our list of requirements. At the end of the day, when we approve an application, before letting the applicant know, we'll reach out to the landlord, give them a quick rundown, just a few bullet points on when they're moving, how many people are living there, what they do for work, income, credit range, whether they have any pets. Pets are something that we can actually agree to with you as the landlord ahead of time, whether you wanted to allow pets or not, and that's something that we can discuss before listing the property. When we do have that final approval, we will reach out to the tenants, let them know they're approved. First and foremost, we collect their security deposit, and then we'll send out a copy of the lease agreement. Once they sign the lease agreement, we take the property off the market, and then at move-in, they owe their first month's rent upon move-in. We usually take that in the form of a security deposit up front, and then second month, the renter is able to pay electronically online. Our job is to collect the rent. Our job is to enforce the lease, draft the lease. By the way, I've looked at thousands of lease agreements from every single type of company and self-managed landlord you can imagine, and I am always shocked at what I see. No late fee, rent due on the 15th of the month, $10 late fee. You might as well have no late fee if it's that low. Just really no enforcements, no extra added language that really protects the landlord. If you're using the state contract, you probably know that there's hundreds of blank lines on there. How do you know what to fill out, right? We have, and I'm going to show you guys copies of a couple pages of our lease agreement. This is a very ironclad lease that has the highest late fee that each state allows, that has fees if the tenant submits a maintenance request and then cancels at the last minute, or gives us access to view to visit the property, cancels last minute, or does not give us access to the property, wants us to meet them there, and then no shows. So we've got a few different things. We've got notice posting fees, we've got insufficient funds fees, we've got late fees, and we know what correct amounts to put. So our job is to collect the rent. If rent isn't in on time, then we reach out to the tenant the day that rent is considered late to let them know, right? Even if you wanted to do that on your own and maybe you got busy, that is already going down the wrong path, right? Everything is about setting the precedence with the renters from the very beginning. Knowing, and the precedence we set is, hey, look at all of our awesome online reviews on Zillow and Yelp. You know that we've got great reviews. You can see what people are saying about us. We are a professional property management company with a nice website and a pretty user-friendly software. They know we're a business. That means they know that we enforce the lease. We didn't just start, renting properties yesterday. Tenants can so easily take advantage of landlords. I see it all the time, right? This is not a hobby for you. This is not like just kind of like something that you want to dabble in. This is your retirement. This is your income. This is your livelihood. Not things that you should just try to mess around with on your own. Kind of like just try to do surgery on your own, right? I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to, do my own dental work on my own. I don't even like having doing like auto work on my own. I'm not. A lot of things that I could do, but just why, right? Like, is that the best use of my time? Is that what's going to make me the most money? Is that what's going to benefit me the most, right? We perform ongoing property maintenance. We'll determine whether the tenant caused the damage or whether it's considered normal wear and tear. We're very familiar with what those mean. And we do understand that if we pull a bunch of hair out of a drain, it's likely that we'll be able to charge the renter for not having a hair catcher. We know that in certain maybe small cases, roof leaks are not the responsibility of the renter, right? So we'll be able to determine exactly what is considered tenant and landlord responsibility. We've been able to save people so much money by being able to put the responsibility back on the renter, even if it was kind of a little bit in the gray area and a little bit hard to determine, and we were able to determine it was renter responsibility. I mean, that's gonna earn our fees tenfold in those cases. We provide monthly and yearly statements, so you have a convenience of accounting, being able to easily track the accounting of your properties. And then again, we conduct inspections, annual inspections every time that there's a lease renewal. This is a good slide. Again, I mentioned that I'm recording this. You guys will have access to the slide deck afterwards. But essentially, this is the property management life cycle, and kind of gone through a few of these so far, kind of gone through that whole process. But to give you an idea of where we're at, before we even manage a property for a landlord, we always do a complimentary rental analysis, even if it's a property that they're considering on buying, or even if it's a property that they're in escrow on and don't even own yet. If you're considering to rent out your current primary residence, if it's within one of our markets, we can visit the property, we can meet you there, we can give you feedback on the property. We can do a rental market analysis even before you decide to list your property for rent. I've touched on a lot of this. I'll keep going and kind of come back to a few of those steps in the process. So this is page 1 of our California property management agreement. This is just an example, and I'm highlighting a few things in yellow. So every property management agreement should have a start and end date, most commonly a 12-month agreement with an automatic renewal at the end of the expiration. Most property management agreements will state that agreement renews automatically at the end of the term on a basically 30-day basis, meaning that once the term is done, you can typically cancel on a 30 days notice afterwards if you wanted to. As I come down a little bit lower, repair maintenance. So every property management company will always have a minimum dollar amount that they're required to ask for your approval if the repair is above that amount. So ours is $400. That gives us the ability to lower our expenses on minor items, right? If we have our plumber come out and fix a toilet flapper valve and it's $100 or $80 or whatever they charge, if we have to tell them, hey, I'm sorry, we gotta get permission from the owner, they're gonna charge a trip fee for something so small. Handyman as well too. If they're not able to diagnose and fix something on the spot, typically they'll charge to have to come back again. Anything above this amount, our vendors, our contractors will put together an estimate. It's very common in the industry. We'll be able to send that estimate or even additional estimates to the owner. And of course, it depends on what the sense of urgency is, right? I mean, we know that during certain parts of the year, whether the heat goes out or whether the AC goes out, we know that we have a very short time clock. And we do prioritize those as much as possible. Getting bids on AC unit replacement, getting bids on furnace replacement. These are things that we try to move quickly on, and we hope that our landlord understands that it's something that we have to make a relatively quick decision on if we're in that hot or that really cold part of the season. Security deposits. So we have a minimum 1 month's security deposit. It's not likely that we'll increase it much higher than that. There are a small amount of properties that have a 2-month security deposit that we manage. Those are furnished properties. Also, we only manage a very small amount of furnished properties. The 95 or 98% of you on here, the property that you own, it may not make sense furnished. There are, in some rare cases, if you have extremely high-end nice furniture and it's your absolute do or die goal to furnish out a property, and if it's in an area that's in a very densely populated inner city area where you do see people moving without furniture, then it might make sense. I'm going to say at least 95% of you and at least 95% of the properties I look at do not make sense to have furnished. So happy to talk through that more later, one-on-one if you like, but essentially we have a minimum 1 month security deposit that sits in our broker trust account. That's another thing. We actually have a non-interest bearing trust account. That's where all of our security deposits sit. And that's really the safest way for the owner. It's the safest way for the tenant, right? You didn't spend your security deposit after receiving it. And the tenant can rest assured that their funds are being held in a trust account, not just spent on other things that we might end up spending it on. Speaking on behalf of the landlord, I mean, I've actually talked to landlords that have spent their security deposit, and so you wonder how a situation like that can happen. Better off in the hands of a property management company. What happens after the move out is that we're going to do a security deposit itemization. We, Marshall Reddick, we're legally responsible for handling that security deposit refund within the state's legal requirement amount of time. California, very tenant friendly, 21 days or less. Texas, Florida, these other markets, we've got a full 30 days to do all of our inspections, gather bids, do the itemization, and then send it back to the renter. We're going to do that on your behalf. We're going to do that move out inspection. We're going to get an itemized bid. We're going to line item which items are the responsibility of the landlord and which are responsibility of the owner, or of the tenant. Second item on that list is a reserve. So it varies between markets, but we're going to have anywhere between a $250 up to $500 per property reserve. We have some landlords that own as many as 20, 30, or even more than 30 units with us. We cap the reserve usually between about $1,500 and $2,000 because in many cases those are large apartments that we might not really need, a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 reserve on. So this reserve is only used either during vacancy when we are paying utilities on behalf of the landlord or doing any minor repairs during vacancy. Or during occupancy, it's really only used for emergencies, to have that cushion there if something does come up that we need fixed. and it's considered an emergency. We remit statements monthly and annually. You'll want to know on your property management agreement, so hopefully we have the opportunity to work with you. If it's outside of one of our markets and you're working with a property manager in a different area, these are things that you want to be aware of. When does the property manager disperse their rent? So I'm looking at L right now. It's that third yellow highlight there. We disperse our rents in the fastest that the industry calls for. So we send out and initiate all of our disbursements between the 12th and the 15th of the month. And they usually hit our landlord's bank accounts by the 15th. If it's a major holiday or a weekend, then on the following business day. There isn't faster than that. I know that. I'm a landlord myself. I have various property managers even outside of Marshall-Reddick and other areas I own real estate in. My Alabama property, I get paid around the 20th of the month. I own a property in Phoenix, Arizona. I receive my rents on the 25th of the month. I've heard from folks saying, well, hold on a second. I get my rent from my property manager on the 5th of the month. What you probably get is the rent from the previous month. You're getting your rent 35 days later. You just maybe, forgot that because maybe you had to wait a month in the beginning, but chances are if you're getting your rent that quick, you're probably getting it for the previous month, not the current month. And really, I think how this works is you hopefully are in a situation where you can still survive during a vacancy, right? You can still pay that mortgage if you don't have rental income. But again, our job is to always reduce that vacancy as much as possible. So again, our accounting team sends out disbursements that hit our owners' accounts by the 15th of the month. Number 6, be aware because of California's strict policies, I guess. California's Franchise Tax Board does call for a 7% non-California resident income tax and a 30% non-U.S. citizen rental property income tax. That's if you own property in the state of California, if you're not a resident of the state of California. Not aware of that in the other states we operate in. Definitely something that we can talk more about one-on-one as well. So part of our property management agreement is going to talk about the term, which I covered. We have a 12-month term. We do not have a cancellation fee after the 12 months. We do have a cancellation fee if somebody cancels early for absolutely no reason at all, which is also pretty common. That's our early termination fee. You want to be aware that after that first initial 12 months, no matter who you're working with, that you do not have any fees for canceling. You should not have to cancel an agreement with a property manager that you've worked with for 5, 6, 7, 8 years and have to pay any fees. That is just not common in our industry. It is common if you cancel, within the time frame, the first 12 months, for absolutely no reason at all. Authorities and powers of property managers, you'll see in here, we have the ability to collect security deposits on behalf of the owner, collect rents on behalf of the owner, perform maintenance and vacancy on behalf of the owner, approve applications on behalf of the owner, right? List the property, stage the property, advertise the property. These are just things that you should be aware of when you read a property management agreement. What are the duties and responsibilities of the property manager? It's not uncommon for a property manager to verify that the landlord has enough of a liability coverage, right? Lenders will require, landlords carry a insurance policy. Many people own properties in cash. So it's important for us to review that and make sure that the landlord's protected. We recommend anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 of liability coverage. If you're a landlord that has a portfolio of properties, you may want to look into getting an umbrella policy to have an additional policy of up to $1 million that's in addition to the liability coverage you have on each property. Basically, I'm talking about asset protection. Asset protection is a mixture of professional property management to prevent the issues from happening and having adequate insurance coverage to be there if those issues occur. I do not consider, entity structuring and LLCs and all these things. To me, that's 5% of asset protection. I consider 50% being property management, and maybe let's say 45% being insurance, making sure that you have the proper coverage if something occurs. Now, I want to share common fees in property management, and being a landlord myself for 13 years, being a property manager, working with so many thousands of investors over the years, I have a good idea of what property management costs. So you can expect, I guess you could say, in your higher income markets of like New York or California, San Francisco, LA, you may see property managers that charge as low as 5%. There is a term in our industry that's you get what you pay for in property management. You certainly get what you pay for, or the property manager is padding their money into maintenance and repairs, and that's even worse. So you really want to make sure that you're evaluating getting the most value for the fees, not just going with the cheapest service. You'll definitely get what you pay for, and guaranteed you'll end up suffering from it. So you definitely want to work with good property managers. And if you're looking at the higher end fees, find out if you're getting as much of a value as a company that might charge a little less. Our management fees vary. Really, I mean, they start at 8%, go all the way down to 5% based on how many units you have, based on your unit count. I'll show you guys on our website later where you can find all of our fees. Industry standards for leasing fees, I put 25% on here. I've really only seen that a couple times. The average leasing fees are anywhere from 50% of 1 month's rent all the way up to just 1 full month's rent in property management. Now, if you're working with a realtor, their fees are a little different. Realtors typically charge 5 to 6% of an entire lease term, meaning 5 to 6% of the annual gross rent. That's going to be a lot higher than our fee. Our fee is 50% of 1 month's rent. So right off the bat, you're going to pay less in a leasing fee with us than you would use with a realtor, and you're going to get tenfold value from it. You'll see project management fees. This is when property managers charge fees for coordinating a large remodel. Usually, if something is above $5,000. Maybe around that amount. If they're having to coordinate a large remodel, you'll see a project management fee. We have a 5% project management fee for coordinating any work above $5,000. You'll see average leasing fees, lease extension or lease renewal fees usually range between $100 and $250. Ours is $150. Average setup and onboard fees. A lot of companies that do charge admin or initial setup fees. We do not have any initial admin or starter fees whatsoever. Again, our fees are entirely based on the property's performance and the income that we receive from the property. Moving along here to some other aspects of the property management life cycle. How much will my property rent for? So I do want to touch on that for just a minute or two. It's really important that you guys understand how a professional property manager like us evaluates the performance. A property is not going to rent just for what you want it to rent. Just because you want a property to rent for a certain amount doesn't mean it will. So it's extremely important that you look at a rental market analysis. We take into account a lot of different factors to come up with the fair market rent. When we put together a rental market analysis, we're looking at like-kind properties, same bed, same bath. We get very granular on this. If you own a 2-bed, 2-bath condo, we're not going to put 2-bed, 1-bath condos on there as a comparison because it's not a comparison. A property with 2 full baths within the radius of that property is going to rent for more if it's similar condition and everything else weighs the same than a property with 1 bath. Also, properties that have appliances included like fridge and washer dryer, not only will they typically get you a little bit more in rent, but they're going to significantly decrease and cut down on the days on market. The majority of renters, no matter what market you're in, are not lugging around a fridge. There are some markets we're in where it's a little bit more common to see tenants having their own washer dryer. Can get into that more. But again, even in those markets, many renters do not have their own washer dryer. So if they're looking at different properties and one's got the fridge included, the other one doesn't, I mean, your property is going to get passed over and over again. And we've seen that happen with landlords that refuse to provide a refrigerator. I understand, right? You don't want to be responsible for the costs. So get a new fridge. It'll last you 15 years. You have a manufacturer warranty, right? Anything happens with that fridge, that tenant causes any damage, I mean, we're going to be charging them back for it, right? You have to look at the value that having a fridge provides, and how it allows you to rent your property significantly quicker. And when that fridge gets close to 10 years, I mean, consider allowing us to replace it. But it's very important that you do provide a fridge. The practice of determining this rental amount is called a rental market analysis. We put it together using the MLS. We're not just using Zillow. We're using data, historical data on what properties are actually rented for. There's no other way to determine the true fair market value. This is the example at the bottom of the screen that I would like everybody on our presentation to do. If you have a vacancy right now, or if you own a property where maybe the lease is coming due in the next couple weeks or months, what I'd like you to do is take the monthly rent and divide by 30 to get the per diem dollar amount in vacancy loss. I'm using an example of a $3,000, you could say this is a California property, I guess, that amount, $3,000 a month rent, divided by 30. Every day that property is vacant, you're losing $100. This is the scenario I go through with people is like, why go through a 60-day vacancy? Why lose $6,000? Why go through a 3-month vacancy? Why lose $9,000? If the reason that people aren't renting your property is something that you can fix with less than $1,000. If the reason that people are coming there and not seeing the fridge and passing up, or coming there and seeing just this ugly wall that hasn't been repainted in 8 years and it's been touched up over and over and over again, or carpet that should have been replaced and instead it was just shampooed, all these expenses that I just mentioned, I mean, we're talking, you know, $800 to maybe $1,500, $2,000 at the most. That could mean the difference of you losing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, right? It's very important that you do this per diem example. You need to know what the per diem, the per day vacancy dollar amount is of your property so that you can weigh these decisions and go, you know what, if I bought a fridge and rented my property in 3 weeks versus not having a fridge and having it sit vacant for 60 days, maybe that makes sense. Just giving you guys a little bit of screenshots here on how we run a rental analysis. We're going to look at, we're going to filter out properties that are month to month. We're going to filter properties that have pools. We're going to filter out properties that don't have the same kind of parking. If your property has a 2-car garage, you know, we're going to be looking at properties that have a garage, not properties that have carport or only outside parking. So we look at all of these different factors to come up with what the actual fair market rent is. We filter out unfurnished. We're looking at properties the same bed, same bath, and typically within about a mile radius. And we go back as much as 6 months to look at these rental comparisons. This is an example of a rental market analysis that I did recently in the city of Irvine, California. And, you know, when I pulled it at first, I started with this screen here, but that's not where it ended. We don't cross freeways. We try to stay in the same community. If your property is in a community, we're only looking at properties in that community. If it's a small community and there hasn't been a lot of rental activity in the last few months, we'll go back 6 months. We'll go back a year. We're going to look at what properties have rented for in that specific community, because your community might have parks, pools, playgrounds. And we're going to make sure that we're only looking at properties in that community to come up with that exact dollar amount. A few pages of our rental market analysis are going to show a list of comparable properties. You'll be able to see the bed, bath, square footage, rent amount, when it rented, days on market, how long it took to rent, pictures of the properties so that we can really look at and make sure that we're looking at a property that has similar updates. And we'll also be able to give you the average of days on time in that area, or the days on market for any active properties to really just help you determine exactly where we should be. We want to beat the competition. If there's other active properties nearby, it's safe to say that renters are smart enough to look at both. If your property is in an area of other properties, again, you're not the only game in town. Don't think that renters are only looking at your property. Assume that they're looking at other properties. We'll do that research for you and tell you how we need to be priced competitively so we can rent your property in 2 weeks rather than 2 months. Just some more examples on the rental market analysis report. Kind of jumping into the rent ready process here a little bit. So some of the areas that we're going to focus on, and what's really important to us is to make your property attractive to high quality tenants at the highest rent possible and to rent it in the shortest amount of time possible. We want to be able to attract the good quality renters and deter the less qualified renters. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at cosmetics. We're going to look at pricing it correctly. We're going to look at the cleanliness of a property. We're going to look at this from the eyes of a renter and give you feedback on what we know is needed to attract that good quality renter. There's another saying in property management that your renter will look like your property and your property will look like your renter. The condition of a property, the cleanliness of a property, the marketing of a property will have an impact on the quality of renter that it attracts. We go through, I'm sharing with you guys a list of our, this is what we call our rent ready checklist, otherwise known as our punch list. Before we list a property for sale, our maintenance supervisor goes through this entire list, checks batteries, in smoke alarms, makes sure that there's CO2 monitors, make sure that that appliances are working, tests the plumbing, test the HVAC, right? We're going to do as much as we can in that property to make sure that we've caught any deferred maintenance and also remedied anything that would prevent us from getting the property rented. What I did here is I took a screenshot of one of the bids that we had recently. All of our bids are directly from our third-party independent contractors. We do not doctor this up. We do not edit it. It comes directly from our contractor, and it also has itemized expenses. So we're going to provide estimates that are itemized. You're going to see the costs for labor and materials. It'll be very transparent. All of these things determine the quality of renter and also determine how quickly we can get that property rented. Going through the screening process, if we've got somebody that's just kind of on the line and maybe they're on the border of passing, we're going to ask the owner. At the end of the day, if we feel the property's priced right and it's getting enough attention, if it hasn't been on the market very long, we'll probably recommend to the landlord to let us keep looking. All right. It really all depends on being able to price the property right, market it correctly from the beginning, remedy any eyesores before we do any showings, and really just set ourselves up for success. I mean, our goal is to get multiple applications so that we can choose from the cream of the crop. All of these things on the screen here allow us to do that. And so, as I mentioned already, the goal for us is securing the highest rent to the best renter in the shortest amount of time possible. 1, 2, 3, and 4 allow us to do that. Before we even list the property, we have a good idea of what it'll rent for. As soon as it's gone vacant, we're putting our eyes on it, giving the landlord feedback on what this property needs to attract a renter and to keep the landlord's expenses and headaches low. We screen our applications very quickly. So we get back to our renters typically within 2 business days, our applicants within 2 business days, as long as they provided everything up front. We have a whole team that just processes our applications, calls employers, calls landlords. We want to get back to our renters quickly. We try to find out if they've applied to multiple places. If they have, we do our best efforts to secure them on our property. A little bit about what our leasing agents do. Our leasing agents are realtors that work for Marshall Reddick. Their primary role is leasing properties that we manage in our property management department. Our leasing agents play a very big role. They also have a direct relationship with the landlord. So anytime a property goes vacant, we introduce or reintroduce our leasing agents so that they can have a direct line of communication with the landlord. What I want to really point out here is it looks like it's the 7th bullet point: provide weekly activity reports. This is something that you will not see from most property managers. We actually proactively on a weekly basis have our leasing agents email the landlord during vacancy, letting them know the number of inquiries received, the number of showings we did in the last week, and whether we received any applications. Also, if we're getting any common feedback. We'll know if it's priced right that we get a lot of interest. If we get a lot of interest and we're doing a lot of showings, we know we priced it correctly. If we're not seeing applications from those showings, we know it's something happening at that property. And likely we've given you feedback as a landlord already. So when we give you up front, so when we give you that feedback from live examples, it shouldn't be a surprise. And again, the goal is to get that property leased quickly and to set ourselves up for success from the very beginning. Our leasing agents procure and receive the applications from the applicants, from the tenant prospects. Then that gets handed over to our property management team, who prepares the lease, sends it out through electronic signature. We do not sign these things in hand. Everything is signed electronically for pure convenience and turnaround time. We know from experience that some tenants take better care of their properties. You know, if a renter has owned property in the past, that's great. That's wonderful for us to see. You know, if they've owned property in the past, chances are they have experience maybe replacing a water heater, or knowing what shouldn't be flushed down the toilet, or having a hair catcher in their shower, or maybe even doing some of the gardening, right? It's possible that renters that have owned property in the past before have had to do these things that most renters don't have to do. We love seeing that. We know some tenants communicate with us more and they're more proactive. They have they take good care of properties. They're cleaner than others. You know, a lot of that is going to relate to the property class of your property and presenting it correctly and positioning it for that right renter. I'm going to share a couple examples. We're getting a little closer. I know we're a little past an hour here. Should be about maybe 10 minutes or so. It looks like most of you guys are on, so I'll make sure we get through the remainder. So this is a property in Long Beach, California that we listed last year. I want to share with you, I'm sharing with you a few things. Not necessarily that photo. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, it looks like it could use a trimming. Anyway, we leased it pretty quickly. And as you can see at the bottom, we listed it on July 6th. We took it down on July 7th. $44.95 was our rent. And really our range to the owner was about $4,500 to $4,700. This owner, this property had owned it for many years, had lower expenses, was in a position to say, you know what, I want to shoot for the lower end. I just want to get as many applications as possible. I want to just get this property rented immediately. So I'm not gonna go below the fair market rent. I'm just going to go on the lower end of the range, right? In a lot of cases, we have a range. We gave them a range of 45 to 4,700. This is how many applications we received in 5 days. I covered that second, that had actually had the applicants' names on it, so I didn't want to share that. Oh, it totally still is on there. Okay, well, whatever. Oops. I guess I was supposed to do the first and the second. Anyways. Oh boy. All right. Anyways, this is all the applications received is a screenshot in our property management software. We received applications starting on the 7th all the way to the 12th. We actually had a difficult decision picking a good one because there were so many applications. We don't always receive 15 applications. There are cases where we will receive 5, 10, or 15 applications. It does happen. It doesn't happen every time, and really kind of all the stars align, you know, when we price it correctly and do professional photos, and if the landlord kind of lets us have a little bit more autonomy and giving them feedback on what the property needs, we can definitely see this happen. So the obvious question, the elephant in the room, is like, how has COVID affected our capabilities of leasing properties, managing properties? What I will say is, if anything, with leasing, it's definitely been a benefit. We've noticed that days on market wise, there's kind of a little bit more rental demand. Renters are a little bit more decisive. More people are moving around because they can work from home and they're deciding to upgrade, or they're deciding to move to a different city or a different state altogether. So we've just seen so much demand from renters throughout this whole process. We're also positioned in major metropolitan markets that have very strong job growth, very large population, and diversity of economic employment. So I think that definitely helps where your property is located. Higher demand, lower days on market. Our applicants work in essential industries. So all these renters that we're qualifying now, a lot of them work in medical, they work in manufacturing, they work in military, you know, they work in, they're business owners or self-employed, or they work in finance, or they work in areas that have not necessarily been impacted negatively by the pandemic. And our requirement is that they have to show that income history. So you know, right off the bat, we already have strict guidelines. We do virtual tours. We're doing a lot more virtual tours now. Our renewal rate has increased. We see more renters. Believe it or not, I mean, you think like a lot of people are moving around, but at the same token, we're not really seeing that so much in the properties that we're renting. I don't know if that means we have maybe you know, a large amount of properties in high affordability markets already. A lot of, you know, a large amount of our portfolio, 75% of our portfolio is in, you know, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. So these are high affordability markets. But essentially, we just aren't seeing as many people break their leases or moving out at the end of their lease. Definitely seeing lower demand for furnished properties. People don't want other people's furniture, especially right now. And then student rentals, that's a whole nother bag I'm not even going to get into right now. All right, so one more example here. This is in our Orange County market. Want to share with you again at the bottom, there's another example. This is a property we listed on April 23rd. We took down on April 28th, 5 days later, 3-bed, 2-bath, corner property, 14 applications. Again, you know, we had to get the owner to listen to our feedback on certain things the property needed. We did our professional photos. He listened to our rent range. Again, went with the lower end of the rent range. Was able to get a lot of applications. You can certainly say that there is a very profitable, lucrative aspect to potentially pricing your property on the lower end. But we'll give you the low end, the average, and the high end rent range. A lot of that's going to be based on conditions, upgrades, appliances, where your property is located within a neighborhood, street, or community. If you're in a cul-de-sac, right, versus being on a major road, we're going to look at all those things. My property's been vacant for 90 days. Why has this happened? Here's why it's happened. Either the wrong person is managing the property, or it's priced too high, or it's got poor photography. Maybe it's got erroneous or incomplete data. Maybe it's not advertised on all the major websites. Maybe the person's phone number or email address is not answering their phone or responding to emails. Maybe there's a communication breakdown. Maybe if you're your own property manager, maybe you're busy when people are calling, right? We answer the phone. This is our job. This is what we do, right? So not only do we answer the phone, but we know exactly how to handle that phone call. We know what questions to ask. We can understand how to discern and to you know, build judgment on whether a particular renter may or may not be qualified. I love this example. This is a property in Los Angeles that essentially we were and knew and had a relationship with the landlord, did not act as their leasing agent or property manager. But we certainly use this as an example of what happens when you're not doing it correctly. So you can see there's 2018 on the bottom half and then 2020 on the top half. You can see that back in 2018, this person did not learn their lesson the first time, and they incurred a 5-month vacancy, right? It looks like some changes were made. Prices went up and the price went down and the price went up again, and I don't even know what happened there. I'm looking at the bottom half. you know, it looks like they took it off the market in August 2018. April 2020 comes around, they listed for $6,000. Then they increased it for $5,700. Then they lower it to 50. I mean, they're floundering. They have no idea what they're doing. There was no strategy in place. There were bad decisions made. Really hard to tell what happened, other than the first time 2 years ago they had a 5-month vacancy. Then last year they had a 6-month vacancy. You can see the property probably rents for around $5,000. Do the math. Look at what they would have made if they did this correctly and had this rented in 30 days instead of 6 months. You don't want to be this person. Anyway, let's keep going through. A few more minutes here. Coming down the wire. I think we'll have a hard stop at 8 o'clock Pacific time. Really appreciate you guys being on here. I know we're going on a little longer. Appreciate the value in the comments and the questions I'm reading on here. Our application fee, we know what the state's maximum application fee charges. We're usually going to be on the higher end of that. We require everybody 18 and over to complete and actually complete and fully complete an application. The nice thing is our application is digital. They can't submit it unless everything's filled out. They have to upload a copy of their government IDs, passports, driver's licenses for everybody 18 and over. And then we're going to run that full background check. So we're going to ask for pay stubs, government issued IDs. I went through some of this already. So this is for folks that if you're watching the recording, you know, you can pause this. The slide deck is available below when you're reviewing the recording on our website. We do require renters to carry their own renter's insurance policy. That's for their protection and the owners. And boy, have we used it. It has come up many times before where the renter's items are damaged either from a leak or different reasons, where their renter's insurance policy will kick in and cover that for them. Minimum credit requirements, as mentioned already, 600. I went through this already. 5 different types of background checks. It's just no landlord has the ability to do this on their own, has the time to do this on their own, has the knowledge to do this on their own, has the resources to do this on their own. Most real estate agents don't even do most of this. If you've had a realtor to lease your property, I hope you don't do that anymore, first of all, because they're charging you more and they're doing less. Secondly, they don't have a team of contractors. They don't have a staff of people that are calling employers, that are calling landlords, that are doing all these. What they do is they'll just kind of glance at the pay stub. They probably are just asking you, you know, what's your, you know, landlord, sir or ma'am, what's your income requirement? You know, they're just a paper pusher in that scenario. They're just an order taker. You don't want an order taker running your property. You want a team that knows what they're doing. So we have standards and practices for each one of these screening processes. Absolutely following fair housing laws to the T. We know what those fair housing laws are. Realtors don't in most cases because that's not what their job is. Their job is to help people buy and sell real estate. A realtor's job, you know, I mean, maybe they could do leases if they try, right? They don't have the software to run all these reports that I'm talking about. They don't have the teams, they don't have the time. They're out chasing $1 million listings, and I don't blame them. That's what realtors do, right? They're not prioritizing the lease of your $1,500 a month property or $2,500 a month property. They might say that they are, but they're out doing listing presentations. They're out doing buyer tours. They're out working with buyers and sellers. That's what makes them money. A property management company is the right solution to work with. This is what we're designed to do. We don't care if your 1-bed, 1-bath unit rents for $500, or if you own a 4-bedroom home in a very highly sought after area that rents for $10,000 a month. It doesn't matter to us. This is our job. You know, we build long-term relationships no matter how much rental income, no matter whether you have 1 property or 20 properties. You matter just as much to us. One area of the leasing agreement is our early termination for the renter, right? I never see this on any self-managed leases, never. Not once have I seen this on any lease that a landlord put together on their own. It's because you're not a property manager. Anyway, yeah, so we do charge an early termination fee. We're legally allowed to. Where did it go? There we go. 1 month's rent, right? Renter, if you want to break our lease, you can do that. You have to pay a 1 month fee, and we will continue collecting rent from you until we place a new renter in that property or until after the term of the lease ends, right? That renter is on the hook for paying that rent. Do you want to chase after them or have us do it, right? So also, we're going to enforce that they pay that 1 month's fee. Otherwise, we're going to smash their credit, right? They know this. These are all things that we talk to them about ahead of time. Way too much on there. I went over this already. This is just 1 page of our lease agreement that talks about the key replacement fees, the insufficient funds fees, the late fees, the notice posting fees, the non-cancellation or late cancellation of maintenance fees. These are fees that protect us and they protect you as the landlord when the renter's not doing things that they should be doing or doing things they shouldn't be doing. Went through a lot of this already, so I'm kind of just coming down to the end here. Last final slides here. What are good qualities to look for in a professional property manager? It's really important that your property manager is up to date on technology. What software do they use, right? There's Propertyware, Appfolio, Buildium, Rent Manager. What software does your property manager use, right? It's important that first and foremost, they don't have software. They're not a professional property manager. Impossible to cover everything, cover all the tracks, have all these alerts, have all these reminders. We have tons of reminder alerts set up in our system for when a renter's lease is 90 days towards the end of the term or 60 days towards the end of the term, or when it's time for us to reach out to the renter and get updated renter's insurance policy, or reach out to you as the landlord and get your updated landlord insurance, or reach out to the HOA and get their updated HOA rules and regulations, right? These are things that we're able to keep track of in our software. Is there a maintenance conflict of interest with your property manager? Probably the most important thing on here. I'm going to say one of the most important topics that I've discussed tonight is determining whether your property manager makes money from repairs and maintenance. Even if they work with third-party independent contractors, are they adding fees on top of that? It'll say that in your property management agreement. You want to make sure that you're not having to pay, 10% markups or 15% markups when essentially, you can work with a property manager like us that doesn't charge that at all. We build that into our property management fee. We don't believe in all these nickel and dime fees. We're not the cheapest property manager in the industry. We're definitely not the most expensive property manager in the industry. We just provide the most value for the dollars. And that's exactly what you want in a property manager. Again, think of your property manager as your babysitter. Do you want trust with your babysitter? Is having the right babysitter important, or the right doctor, the right lawyer, right? These are important people in our lives, the right financial advisor, right? If you pick the right property manager, it'll allow you to scale your portfolio. If you've got a property manager, or if you're doing it yourself and you're constantly having to deal with headaches and problems, then it's probably not something that you're going to be focusing on building your portfolio. So property management will also help pave the way for you to not have all these issues and problems, so that you can basically continue building your portfolio, buying more properties, increasing your income. How responsive is your property management team? We pride ourselves on responsiveness. We're proactive with updates during vacancies. What do our online reviews look like, right? So you can look up companies on Yelp or Google or Zillow to see what their online reviews look like. I would just say if it's negative reviews, determine whether it's the tenant or the landlord, right? This is something that, in the property management world. And then look at if the management company responded to that. Look at how they've responded if they did receive a negative review. I think that's important. Lastly, what's the cancellation policy? Are you able to cancel after 12 months without paying penalties, or are you going to be held to some ridiculous fee if you cancel at any point in the future? Usually those fees don't apply if you sell your property with that company, but that shouldn't have anything to do with it. If you decide to move back into your property, or you decide to switch property management, after the term of the lease, you should have the ability to do that. All right, I'm going to give you guys some resources as we wrap up here. If you want to continue learning more about property management, we have a whole section of our website on our Learn page that has articles, guides, videos, tutorials, on property management, you just go to marshallreddick.com/property management, and it'll take you to a filtered page of a lot of different property management education. Sorry, that was a slide I was supposed to have earlier. Anyways, coming down to the end here, I've got you guys some pictures on here of our Yelp page, our Zillow page. It's very important to kind of just read what other people are saying. I always tell landlords to do that. Do your due diligence. Marshall Reddick has a very diverse staff. We have a multilingual staff. We have a staff of, I would consider to say, a highly educated staff, a staff of many of which own rental properties, many of which have a college education. We have many staff members that have a grad school education as well too. But I think what's important is that we're really just capturing the diversity of our renters in today's world. We have staff that speak Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, English, Polish, actually, believe it or not. I don't know if we've had to use that too much yet, but we do have a pretty diverse staff, and that allows us to capture those renters in those markets. To go over our fee structure, and it's extremely hard for me to explain on this presentation because it does change based on the market. It changes based on how many units you have. You can go directly to our website, marshallreddick.com/management. So this one's just management to see the, and then you can scroll down. It'll detail all of the services provided. It'll list the markets that we do property management in. You can see all of the fees directly on our website. Very transparent, nothing hidden. I want to thank everybody for sticking with me. I know this was a little bit longer than expected. I kind of, had a feeling we might go a little bit long. There's just a lot to talk through here. It looks like we've got a large majority of you folks still on with us. That's my direct contact information. I am the VP of Property Management. You'll likely be meeting a lot of our team members. It wouldn't be your day-to-day point of contact. I am one of the partners of the company. So I do work very closely with our property management teams in each office. So even if I'm not directly communicating with you, I'm probably indirectly involved in some way or another. If you have properties that you currently own, you can see I did an edit there. So I'm going to include my actual full phone number for you. This is my direct line, 949-885-5186. Again, 949-885-5186 is my direct line. You can also email me at spastel@marshallreddick.com if you'd like to discuss your property in more detail. We would love to hear from you. This is an opportunity for us to schedule calls or email with you directly.